This is Fumiko Kaneko. You might not be familiar with her, but she's one of the greatest thinkers in the history of egoism. Recently, she has been hailed as a Korean hero, and before that, she was dismissed as a merely lover of a Korean activist who committed suicide in prison. Both labels are insult to her brilliant mind and her integrity as a philosopher. Fumiko wasn't fighting for a country, she was fighting for the right to own herself. Her death wasn't tragedy, it was her final act of sovereignty. She stated herself during her interrogation, "I did not care whether this act would touch off revolution or not. I'm perfectly content to satisfy my own desire. I do not wish to help create new society based on a new authority in different form." In her memoir, she never really talks about Korean independence as passionately as when she explained that filial piety is just another form of the strong exercising power over the weak. She likely participated in the movement for two reasons. First, she met Pak Yeol, a like-minded human being who finally spoke her language of mind. She wrote in her memoir that their relationship began when she told him she hated the emperor system as a divine ruler, and so did he. But while Pak Yeol's reasoning came from a patriotic place as a part of occupied nation, Fumiko's reason came from her life experience as an unregistered musekisha. That experience shaped her perspective on how useless the system was. Despite having a divine being as an emperor, the people still starved and the soldiers still died. Second, she wrote in her memoir about how socialism provided the words for the sympathy and the camaraderie she already felt for the oppressed. She recalled a moment at her maternal grandmother's house where she choked herself to tears while hugging a dog, feeling a deep connection between dog misery and her own struggle. This empathy for the servant, the poor, the oppressed Korean, and even animals was already inside her. Her involvement with Korean independence movement didn't clash with her integrity. It was simply another way to act on the radical autonomy and compassion she had felt since she was a child. Fumiko Kaneko's philosophy came from experience rather than books. Like original thinkers such as Socrates, she didn't learn philosophy, she lived it. She only sought out formal theories later in life to find the language that fitted her inner convictions. Journeying through Buddhism, Christianity, anarchism, socialism, and eventually, nihilism. This was an art of fickleness, but a constant hunt for truth. When one ideal failed to provide the truth, she refused to compromise. She would close the chapter and move on. Her core philosophy was shaped by the painful wound of being unregistered musekisha. To be unseen, denied an education, and forced to pay price for the action of others was her greatest burden. As she wrote, "Make children take responsibility only for what they have actually done. Otherwise, you rob them a true sense of responsibility. Each person and that person alone is a subject of his and her actions." She refused to be crushed by fate, living by the internal mantra, "If no one loves me, I will love myself." Fumiko was not suicidal. Even her first encounter with death by a river ended in a refusal to jump. She asked herself, "Why should I be the one to die so pathetically? I will live a good life and make them pay for what they had did to me." She grew up through abuse and betrayal, but instead of succumbing as a victim, she moved to Tokyo to live a life of my own. Her last poem written in prison show how much she valued the struggle of life. "The little weed twisted around my finger. When I tug at it gently, it cries out faintly. I want to live, hoping not to be pulled out. It digs its heels in. I feel mean and sad. Is this the end of its bitter struggle for life? I chuckle softly at it." How could someone so full of life be suicidal? Her act of treason was a death-guaranteed crime because she pointed out the logical glitch in the Japanese universe. In the West, you can argue against a president as a man, but in Japan, the emperor was the kokutai, or the national soul. By calling him a useless fake god or a lump of meat, she exercised her ultimate sovereignty. When the emperor tried to grant her a pardon, she saw it as a system trying to own her again, and that was her biggest taboo. Much like Socrates refused to run away and instead mocked the jury to ensure his own execution, Fumiko chose her end to claim herself back. Her death was not a way to giving up, it was her final act of sovereignty and her way to stand her ground. Fumiko's philosophy was a profound rejection of all external authority, familial, religious, and state. For her, so-called morality was a relationship between the strong and the weak. Fumiko viewed traditional morality as a tool used by the strong to demand submission from the weak. She specifically targeted Christianity as a courtly faith of slaves that fetters humans to an external concept of God. Fumiko's language directly mirrored Nietzsche's concept of master-slave morality in Beyond Good and Evil. She argued that concepts like filial piety are merely quoted over description of power dynamics, much like Nietzsche's argument that virtue is often just weakness of those who cannot retaliate. She rejected the idea of doing things because they are good. Instead, she acted based on personal desire. I only did it because I wanted to. She believed that individual is the center of the universe and everything should exist for them. Her views are a near-perfect embodiment of Stirnerite egoism, from the ego on its own. Stirner argued that fixed ideas like morality, humanity, and states are wheels in the head, or spokes, that enslave individuals. Fumiko's rejection of loyalty and patriotism as empty phantasm aligned with Stirner's goal to own oneself entirely. Fumiko also identified herself as a nihilist, but her nihilism was active rather than passive. She viewed her job as a tearing down everything that currently exists. She saw the state as a devil called power, and emperor as a pitiful puppet or foolish lump of meat. Her focus on destruction of all living things as a foundation echoes the catechism of revolutionary. Unlike Western nihilism, which often leads to despair, this revolutionary nihilism viewed the total clearing of existing structure as the only path of truth. She expressed disgust to socialists who seek fame and honor or medals, arguing they are still governed by mundane social standards. She also viewed the working class as being so conditioned by power that they would beg to be chained again if freed. Her observation that power is common through all ages and manipulated to serve the convenience of the strong anticipated Foucault's power or knowledge theories. She recognized that power is not just in the government, but in the very way education and morality are devised to protect authority. Fumiko refused to prostrate herself for the sake of survival, stating that dying true to herself is better than living in conformity. In The Rebels, Camus argued that act of rebellion is what gives human life its meaning. By saying no to the state and yes to her own desire even at the cost of her life, Fumiko achieved what existentialists called authenticity. Despite her brilliance, Fumiko's philosophy was radical and dangerous to consume as default rather than as a lesson. This is because her philosophy was also her defense mechanism. Born without legal identity, in poverty, and abandoned by her parents, her teacher, and society, she had no one to teach her that she was precious as a human being. She had to learn it through pain and bruises. As a child, despite her father's abandonment, she was excited every time she met him, holding on to happy memories of their early life. It was only when she returned from Korea and began to speak her mind, rubbing him the wrong way, that their conflict became a permanent break. It was the same when her mother tried to sell her to a brothel, when her grandmother abused her, and when the uncle she trusted used her as a shield for his own infidelity. Through betrayal, she learned self-worth. She learned that no one but herself would love her as a whole. So instead of blaming life, she claimed her autonomy. She found a philosophy that wrapped her ideas beautifully and devoted herself to it. Unlike many female thinkers of her time, she didn't even fight against patriarchy. She didn't see her gender as a main variable. Calling herself a divine commoner, she fought for her right as a human. For her, gender was just like a state, class, or religion, another chain used to pull her into a system. She loathed any system that tried to define, chain, or control her. Her philosophy came from the deepest part of survival instinct. She was a product of era of chaos. Her philosophy was not just an enlightenment of an intellect, but a survival defense. By survival, I mean autonomy and sovereignty, not the life that breathed. She had to be hardcore to be heard. I believe that during her trial, she felt more excitement than anxiety, for she finally had a stage for her voice. But her radicalism won't work in our modern society. To have one centralized belief is more prone to chaos than peace. Unlike in the past, today we breathe the air of human rights. Even the poorest or the most illiterate understand this fact. We no longer live in the era of slavery. Democracy is so universal that even those under communism know they have a right to think and act. Everyone wants to be right, everyone wants to be true. To force only one idea is to destroy other as Qin Shi Huang did. As long as human wants to think, there will be differences and we call it diversity. Try to silence a few, you might win. Try to silence them all, then congratulations, you just trigger the power of the masses. Fumiko stated that the system was just a relationship between strong and the weak and she refused to participate. She wanted to destroy it all, to show the masses how ignorant they were, to let them see the truth behind the scripted power. But without a system, we will fall into what Hobbes called law of nature, the peak of anarchism, where the strong swallow the weak. She felt sympathy for the oppressed, yet without a system, the very people she empathized with would have even less protection. Her philosophy is an individual solution and social catastrophe. We should not take her nihilism as a default setting, but as a corrective. We need Fumiko's spirit to ensure our system do not turn us into a somnolent puppets. If given time, I believe Fumiko would not have stayed that extreme. She was only 22 when she died. Let's rethink how stubborn and explosive we all were in our early 20s. If we dissect her radicalism through psychology, we see a girl who was unheard, unseen, and unregistered. She kept her thought to herself and chased education, believing it would lead her home. When she was arrested, she finally had a stage. For the first time, she was visible. To her, it was a big euphoria. For once, she meant something. She could show to the world that she was her own and they didn't own her. You don't have to destroy the world to admire someone who refused to let the world destroy them.